Welcome to the Sunday edition of the PFF Forecast. It is April 17th. This is Easter. I found out that it was Easter like on Good Friday, I should say. Meanwhile, my co-host Eric is fresh off of what I'm hearing is a spirited Easter egg hunt and a homily that I'm looking to get a download from because I didn't have one for myself. So it's going to be a great episode. In addition to all of that non-football stuff, we're going to talk NFC East win totals, talk a little Baker Mayfield, a little Stephon Gilmore, a little USFL because Eric is over here sweating out some games, and it's been a little bit of a roller coaster so far. And we're going to address some of the hatred, the slander that's come through. We talked about Derek Carr last week, and you guys had some thoughts. So we're going to talk about all those things. Great episode. Let's rock. I need my daily dose. I need my daily from my brother in Christ, Eric Eager. You attended the whole Easter festivities. Give me the highlights.
Yeah, man. I gotta say, I did not go to Good Friday service. Maybe that's why the New Jersey Generals took a 7-point lead and then failed to cover 3.5 last night. I don't know. I did go this morning. And the game was supposed to start at 11 Central, the USFL game, but then there was rain and lightning, so it started actually at 12 Central. So that maybe was God's way of saying, "Hey, thank you for going to church." I don't know. I'm not a legal
perhaps
or theological scholar here. But yeah, I did go to church today. I did not take communion because I am not part of the Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod, so I'm the one member of the family that sits out. I take the kids.
You are the black sheep. You were the prodigal son.
During communion, you can't see my hands spread out here, but during communion, my arms are spread out to keep all 11 children in this family in the pew while the adults get their daily bread.
So you're the big guy. You're the big guy at the kids' table.
And we went bowling last night. I showed you a little picture of the secret handshake that my daughter and I had as I bowled a 111. In my only game.
Look at you. Did you have some bets? Did you have some family bets?
My daughter Chloe, I was talking some mad shit, and my daughter Chloe first frame was like, "Dad, you suck," and I was like, "Okay," and I went down and rolled a strike the first time, like literally the first time my kids have ever seen me bowl, and then my daughter running around the rest of the time says, "My dad's really good at bowling, but my kids don't know the sample sizes yet, for sure." And then, I can't remember what the homily was. They're not called homilies; they're called sermons.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
So, and I know, look, I watched the John Mulaney special too. When they said, because I don't go to like a what do they call it, liturgical church when I go. So like when they said, bless be you, and like I almost said, and with your spirit, because I watched that special. But it's also with you still in the Lutheran church. So like, look, I almost had
I'd fit in perfectly.
Today.
I'd fit in perfectly. I'm so used to saying, and also with you instead of with your spirit.
But you can imagine somebody with a booming voice like me.
Right.
If
you
they
really
make a
stick
faux
out
pas in the liturgy, it counts. So I think I was 100%. I got a PFF grade of like 89.1 at church today.
The only problem was your faux pas there. The "and with your spirit" thing is really special. need to leverage that a little bit more in our common vernacular. I don't know if I'm going to bear the brunt of your Good Friday sins here. I currently am sweating Brooklyn money line. They were underdogs in this game against the Boston Celtics, which I think is obviously I did not agree with. And they're currently down 3. They were down like 10. I don't know, like before we press play on this podcast. I won't force you through my hypothesis building here, but suffice it to say that I am all in on Ramadan Kyrie, and I'm all in on retribution in Boston, especially because they don't have like their best defensive big man. anyways, I ended up giving you my hypothesis there.
Well,
so
we'll see how that goes. I'm with you. I'm co-laboring with you, as I said in a text message today. On that bet.
What's your USFL situation like right
now? Yeah. So right now I have unders in both games. Not a lot of closing line value there because, well, Ben Brown has closing line value because he has some markets that weren't available to me early in the week, and those numbers from open on Fox Bet are down like 12 points. So if you got early, like your unders or cinches. I have unders, and then I have a little bit of a teaser. I have the Philadelphia Stars up to 8.5. And then I have that teased with our Tampa Bay Bandits, who are somehow 6-point favorites in a game that between teams that we've never seen before, which I think is egregious. That thing opened at 1.5. It was 3.5 the other day. Now it's 6. So I teased them down to 0. I also have the underdog in that game plus 5.5, plus 6. So like I'm kind of trying to hit a bunch of middles here. These games are low scoring. The rules are helping some scoring happen. So the kickoffs are from the 25. So, teams, there are returns and they're all the way out to like the 35 in a lot of cases. But the sticky wicket here is you can return the ball out to the 35. You get 1 first down and punt. Then we're back to bad field position again. And like these quarterbacks, man, are horrendous. There have been 4 teams that have played so far and 8 quarterbacks have played. So every single team has gone to quarterback 2. Paxton Lynch today had maybe one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen in relief of Shea Patterson.
Stunned.
So, Jeff Fisher's
Absolutely
team lost, by the way. They're 0-1, so God knows they're going to finish 5-4.
You know what that means? You know what that means? Next week, an absolute stone cold lock is that Jeff Fisher is getting a W.
Exactly. So it's been like, look, it's football. It's entertaining. I know there were a lot of fans in the stands night 1. There were hardly any fans in the stands today. So our friend Jack Collinsworth was on the call.
I turned it on briefly today, and partially because of what you just mentioned. Jack is calling the USFL games, and I was really excited to hear him on the call. Almost more so, honestly, than seeing the play on the field. And when I turned it on, they were showing the stadium, and I was like, because they're playing them all in Birmingham, right? And I was like, wait, are they not allowing fans in the stands? Like, because there was literally no one there. And I was like, they must not be allowing fans in the stands. And that kind of makes sense. Who the hell wants to actually go to one of these games?
I think charitably, it's Easter Sunday, and there was a lightning storm that caused the game to be delayed an hour. So I think
so you're not worried.
Look, I think it's probably the other thing. I think it's probably the other thing, which no one wants to go. And like that, let's be honest, that's probably the likely outcome. But maybe 25% of my prior is concentrated on it's Easter. There was a lightning storm, and they delayed every game by an hour. So these next games that are coming up are at 5 Eastern and then 8 Eastern on Easter Sunday. So we'll see if folks want to go out. But it was a curious sort of choice by the league to start this late in the offseason. I actually don't hate it, right? Because I think the first 2 alt leagues, AAF and XFL, started the week after the Super Bowl. And I think, our like angst for football is built up a little bit more than maybe the continuation from the NFL kept us there during the other 2. But we'll see. Like I said, the product's never going to be that good, but the money is still green.
This is true. Also, the fact that it's in one place, like I don't think people are traveling to watch USFL games. So the people in Birmingham, blessed be their spirit. I don't think I don't know if they went to the first night and were like, you know what, Easter's cool, but it's even cooler, more of this shit. Probably not. I'm just gonna go ahead and guess there. And if people are traveling for the USFL, I'm sorry, more power to you. Okay, let's start with a little NFC East here, and we do want to talk about a little bit of the Baker Mayfield stuff, a little Stephon Gilmore, and we'll get to the slanderous nature of your Derek Carr Raiders commentary from last week. But let's start with the NFC East, and we're gonna go over the win totals, talk about whether we want to go over or under there. Brief reminder. If you want all the things, we're going to drop a lot of data as we talk about these guys, all that great stuff that we use, the quarterback annual, player depth charts, player grades, player data, all the articles we cite, those can all be yours on PFF.com right now for 50% off an elite annual subscription. That is with code DRAFT50. And the beautiful thing about that is not only do you get all of those awesome things, but it will also give you access to everything that PFF has for next season, all the fantasy tools, all the betting tools, and all the improvements that are coming your way. So make sure that you leverage that before the draft happens so you can be ready to rock there. That is promo code DRAFT50 for 50% off. It's less than $8 a freaking month. You're going to wager 50x that on the USFL. So we're now into, this is the last division. And then we'll have hit on all of the divisions. We have talked about the NFC East, but we haven't really actually decided where our leans are on the NFC East. And gosh, I think all of these teams are somewhat interesting. And I think we should save the Cowboys for last. So let's start with a team that after abandoning the Falcons, getting rid of them as our bird of choice, we have picked a new team on both the AFC and NFC side. And our NFC team is the Philadelphia Eagles. They're just a season after potentially having one of the worst teams in the NFL. Their win total, Eric, is 8.5, -110 to both sides.
I'm unashamedly pro Eagles just because obviously one of our interns, Zach Drabkin, went there right after his internship with us. So we root for people around here. Jalen Hurts, great story. Nick Sirianni seems to have overcome a lot of the doubts that we had about him, which I think is a great story. We make the Eagles 8.8 wins. So I think over is the only play in that regard. They were a team I think, has a lot of things going for it right now, right? They had a cap kind of difficulty. They get kind of bailed out by Jalen Hurts being a competent quarterback. By the way, to all the people, and we're going to talk about the Derek Carr stuff again, we're not suggesting you need a quarterback as good as Derek Carr, right? We're suggesting you need a quarterback as good as Jalen Hurts on a rookie deal. That's a different bar, but there's two variables there. How good the quarterback is only one of the two variables, right? And so, Hurts making a second-round pick money. I think about this team and I think about what it's had to go through recently. You had the firing of Doug Peterson. You have the draft pick of Jalen Reagor ahead of Justin Jefferson, and the Vikings laughing at that pick in the war room. Eagles, by the way, making it to the playoffs more times since that blunder, by the way, than the Vikings. So it shows sort of how much the whole thing matters. Last season, this was a team that changed their identity about halfway through the year, right? Halfway through the year, they were not running the football to any running backs, right? It was Jalen Hurts running the football. It was Jalen Hurts throwing the football, and they were struggling. The defense was one of the least imaginative defenses in the NFL. They didn't stunt very much. They didn't disguise coverages very much. They didn't run a ton of man defense. They were very vanilla. And then ultimately what ended up happening was Jalen Hurts' competence, really good line play, both on offense and defense, and then an easy schedule. Let's really be honest here. An easy schedule sort of put them in 9-win territory, to the point where in the first round of the playoffs, they were 9.5-point underdogs to Tampa Bay, and a very sharp group was betting the Eagles. And that's why that number got down to 7.5. They're a team that if your betting models include mismatches in the front seven in both sides of the ball, you're going to like this team. So I think this is going to be an interesting one this year because they still have an easy schedule. Sirianni's going to have a year, more to his credit, and they have 2 first-round picks, so they have an opportunity to pull in 2 more high-impact players right away.
Yeah, all of the things that you mentioned that are completely true. There are a couple of things that I'm not sure that make me want to be positive, but I'm not sure if I should be positive about them. So let's think about Jalen Hurts here for a second. Jalen Hurts in the regular season last year was the 10th highest graded quarterback in the NFL. Okay. And that is with accuracy throwing the football that, especially down the football field, was well below average. But his accuracy, throwing the ball 20 yards, fewer than 20 yards down the football field, was above average. And I think that's something that, we saw that in college. He was an accurate quarterback, and that is borne out in his grade. Now, throwing the ball down the football field was a nightmare. I don't think they had anyone on the team that could go down the football field, and that, to me, is the real issue. I would love if they brought in Jameson Williams. That would be amazing, and that would be one of the things that I'd be looking for. If they get a deep threat to go along with Devontae Smith, who, by the way, top 25 graded wide receiver last year, I think should be very bullish on their offense. Jordan Mailata came in, played left tackle, graded extremely well, 80 PFF grade. To your point, they have a well above average offensive and defensive line. Darius Slay, top 5 graded corner last year. Like, you look across this team, it shouldn't be surprising that even though they picked Jalen Reagor, who's really bad, they made the playoffs more than the Vikings, because they have been able to leverage the fact that they're not paying Jalen Hurts anything to go out and spend money on the line, at valuable positions in the defensive backfield, and at wide receiver. So to me, there's a lot of opportunity there. I am a little worried about some regression from Jalen Hurts, and I'll tell you the area that is. He made a big improvement last year, about 4 percentage points in percentage of pressured dropbacks taking a sack. That was a big issue for him the year before. He held on to the ball longer than any other quarterback in the NFL. He cut that down a little bit this past year, but it's something that worries me given how much he holds onto the ball, how long he holds on to it for, about 3.2 seconds on average. But here's the biggest thing, and here's the reason I'm going over. Their biggest rival in this division is the Dallas Cowboys. You know what the Dallas Cowboys have going against them once again, Eric? Once again, what do they have going against them? 2 really big issues. The first is their owner wants to get rid of their coach. The players, I don't think, really like the coach. Going back to Hard Knocks, I just did not get the vibe that Dak Prescott likes Mike McCarthy. It's just not there. The Eagles love Nick Sirianni. And here's the other thing. Their quarterback, they're paying Dak Prescott. They had to get rid of Amari Cooper. The Eagles are going to go acquire more talent, play an easier schedule. Eric, it doesn't shock me.
No, it's not shocking.
The NFC East.
I would say, the big thing for them, and like the Jameson Williams thing, unfortunately, when you look at, I made a couple pretty heavy sized wagers this week on 5-1 for him first wide receiver taken. It's now like 2-1, maybe even like plus 150 at this point.
Yeah.
Williams is probably not going to go to them, and they're not a trade up team, so I get a little bit worried there, but they're going to get some sort of, like, look, if you look at their roster, they need
you never know.
A safety, which at this point, Kyle Hamilton could fall to them, right? They need a cornerback, and you're going to get some combination. Again, you're going to play the pigeonhole principle with some of these draft picks. You're going to get some combination of Derek Stingley, Trent McDuffie. Like, you're going to get some corner that's actually got a pulse there at that spot in all likelihood. And then you also need edge, because they went and got Hassan Reddick from the Carolina Panthers, drafted by the Arizona Cardinals out of Temple, which is in Philly. That's like kind of the connection there. You have Fletcher Cox, you have Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave. You still need some youth there. I know they have Josh Sweat and I'm trying to think of Derek Barnett, I believe, is still there. I can't remember exactly if he's still there. Don't quote me on that. But they need high-end edge play as well. And again, it's the pigeonhole thing. One of those good, like somebody at one of those premium positions is going to fall to them by just a numbers game. So I think they're in a good spot there. They also got an interesting acquisition, I think, for this offense. Zach Pascal, who is a bigger slot receiver, has had moments,
triangle,
but I think he's going to be more like their blocking, like Robert Woods type. And I wonder if he'll have success in this offense, because that's where he's slated to go, opposite Goddard there at the tight end spot, with Ertz now, long gone.
Yeah. Yes. Look, as I look at their roster, I think you detailed this pretty well, right? They have some areas that they can address in the draft that they need. There's also, as you think about the wide receiver, like both Pascal and Reagor are graded miserably last year. I think Reagor, like, you've kind of got to punt on that project at this point. I know OBJ is still out there. I think that would be really interesting if they don't, if they're unable to get a deep threat receiver. Apparently this ACL is healing a lot better than the one in Cleveland, which I guess did not go super well. That could be interesting. But I think all those points are correct. And I just have a feeling that the Dallas Cowboys are not running away.
Should we just discuss their number now?
You just get that.
I know
feeling,
you wanted to
right?
say them last,
and,
but like when you look at the odds to win this division,
no,
Dallas
let's do them now.
opened
Let's
bigger
do them now.
favorites in this, but right now they're minus 115, right? And the hard part is no other team in this division, the team we just talked about, who appears to be strong, the Eagles, are 3-1. Washington football team are 9-2. Giants are 13-2.
Mm-hmm.
The market is basically saying we don't know who's going to capitalize on it, but we think the Dallas Cowboys are going to fuck up. Right? That's what this is saying. Like, there's basically an even money chance that the Dallas Cowboys are going to screw up this division, right? And I gotta say, George, I don't disagree. Like, look, there are people, we've worked with Dallas very closely in the past. Like, I don't think they're a dumb organization by any stretch. They have smart people working there. I actually think, and this is maybe like, you might disagree with me, but I think when we say things about Mike McCarthy, we're relating him to other Super Bowl caliber coaches, right? Relative to the average NFL coach, Mike McCarthy's fine. Do you agree with that? So, like, that's where I get a little...
Yeah,
so
sure.
I don't think McCarthy is kind of like... McCarthy's not Jason Garrett, right? He's not Joe Judge. He's not, even Cliff Kingsbury. I think McCarthy's better than Cliff Kingsbury. But he's not that sort of... He's not Andy Reid or anywhere close to Andy Reid. He's not Sean McVay. And I think that's where people get disappointed because he's a guy who's won a Super Bowl before. And he's a guy that at times, I think, pushed the buttons at that caliber. He's just not that anymore. And then you look at where they are as a team, you have a lot of weak links there. You have, Zeke as the running back. Interestingly, in something like the league still views Zeke as pretty good. Like teams, bite on play action to Zeke, I think, a little bit, and not on Tony Pollard. But, like, that's a weak link. They have James Washington, who, by the way, there's a guy named James Washington that ran a fumble back for a touchdown as a Cowboy in the Super Bowl like 35 years ago. But they don't have a third receiver right now. You look at the secondary, like they're very, very weak at cornerback, right? With Diggs, Jordan Lewis, and Anthony Brown. At the defensive line now they're going with Dante Fowler, as opposed to having Randy Gregory there. So there's so many weak links, and then there's also just a lack of depth. And I think that's why the market is saying, look, this is the best team in the NFC East. I don't think that there's really a question about that from an expectation standpoint, but from a variance standpoint, this team, it's a very wide distribution of outcomes.
There are two things that concern me about the Dallas Cowboys offense. The first is that I think people forget maybe how good Amari Cooper is. He's one of the 5 best route runners in the NFL. He's fast. And if you go back and you look at Dak Prescott before he had Amari Cooper, it was not super pretty. Now, they have CeeDee Lamb, they have Michael Gallup. But that is an unknown. CeeDee Lamb has essentially played in an offense where, Amari Cooper, a very, very good wide receiver, is also on the field with him. And this will be an adjustment, right? Dak Prescott loves throwing the ball to CeeDee Lamb. So I'm not worried about that, but it will be a difference, right? He was his most targeted player against the blitz. Interestingly, in the red zone, Amari Cooper was his favorite target. And Dak Prescott threw the ball really well down the football field last year. The guy getting down the football field a lot of the time and getting open is Amari Cooper. And so that'll be interesting. Here's the other thing. The offensive line. You've got some questions there. You still have Zach Martin, who's amazing at right guard, but you have Terrence Steele right now over at right tackle. You have Tyron Smith at left tackle, who when he plays really well, but like consistently is a guy that is going to, he's not going to play the full complement of snaps during the season. And they have some weaknesses across the other positions. So that combined with the fact that they're paying Dak Prescott a huge salary, they're paying Zeke Elliott a huge salary, and then you look at the defense, and that Micah Parsons was amazing last year. But Trayvon Diggs, are you going to bank on him having that many interceptions again this year? Because if you are, I would love to take your money. His PFF grade, 58.5. Why is that? Because when he wasn't catching interceptions, he was getting absolutely toasted. Go watch the games. And that's a problem. And all of those problems are problems that are going to come against a schedule of a first place team where the Eagles are not going to have to face that kind of a schedule. 10.5. I know under is juiced -115. And I know a lot of people could see them winning 11 games. I get it. This is a 9-10 win
We
team.
make it 9.77. We put them at 44.7% to make the division. So, probably not enough Eagles. So we had Philadelphia, by the way, at 25%, which is right at 3-1, which is right where the market is. So I think we're probably right on market with these teams. I think an under is a great play on Dallas, right? This is a team. Think about last year. What were they? 12-5, right? And they had to win a game at the Metrodome against Cooper Rush, or with Cooper Rush against Kirk Cousins, right? That's like a classic meltdown. They got Washington in one of Chris's games. That was where Washington was really COVID, banged up with COVID. This isn't a team necessarily that's like an arm's length away from being a 10-win team, right? Even last year, when I think, they had Cooper and they had Trayvon Diggs playing as well as he did. You even think about that New England game that went into overtime. Like, New England probably should have won that game, right? In New England with Mac Jones playing so well. Right. Under's the only play here. Maybe wait until the end of the offseason when all the Dallas public money has come in, because that is one where you're going to get shaded over. But yeah, that's a very clear under for me.
By the way, I was looking for this data while I was saying it, and I was able to find it. The Amari Cooper stuff. 18 deep attempts, 20 plus yards downfield, caught 10 of them. That was tied for most on the team. CeeDee Lamb had 24 targets, 10 completions. Amari Cooper, when he threw the ball to Amari Cooper, Dak Prescott had 121 pass rating. That connection was really freaking good. And the fact that they had to get rid of Amari Cooper because they've paid Lawrence and they've paid Ezekiel Elliott and Jalen Smith is when your team goes out and hangs a banner because they're re-signing, a first-round pick at a non-premium position. Go think about the Dallas Cowboys. If they had Amari Cooper, if the number were still 10.5, I'm definitely a little scared about, I'm definitely not being excited about betting under, right? I'm not sure. I'm for sure going over. I'm not sure he moves the needle quite that much. Is he a full, war player? No, not quite. But that's a big jump, man. That's a big loss for a team that honestly, even with him, down the end, towards the end of the season, the only teams that they looked good against were the god awful Washington football team. It was not good for them.
We forget that they were the one team to lose to that
last season,
free-falling Arizona team, and they did it at home. That was,
right.
it wasn't a great finish for them. And honestly,
it's
in the playoff game against the Niners, that game was a lot closer than it needed to be. The Niners really kicked their ass. Like that's, it wasn't a good finish for them. Should we move on to the team that we disagreed about last year?
A lot of toughness.
Can we call them the Washington football
team? We can move on to,
because I feel like they'll always be the Washington football team to me. We keep it for 1 year.
Commanders doesn't really roll.
Sounds like an XFL.
Gotta be honest with you. It does. It sounds like a creative team name. The Washington Commanders / football team. Their total is 7.5. Over is -120. Under is +100. Now, I feel like the disagreement last year. You won in terms of the outcome. They stunk out loud last year. I think it's a little unfair given that their quarterback, who there was the crux of our disagreement was around, I think, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like I fully accepted the fact that their defense was going to regress. I thought Ryan Fitzpatrick was going to be decent, and obviously he broke his back. So he was unable to play, and Taylor Heineke was terrible. So Ryan Fitzpatrick, probably not, going to be as big a part of the discussion this year. Where are you at with
this team? Is actually interesting and that because I know I've been very critical of Carson Wentz in the past. Like my opinion on Carson Wentz, I think it's oscillated with the truth. Let's be honest. I think that the 2017 Eagles Super Bowl is a Carson Wentz Super Bowl. That dude got them to the 1 seed. The 1 seed was the reason they could beat the Falcons in the first round. And the Vikings were a bad road team in the playoffs that year. And they get to the playoffs, and Nick Foles plays an amazing game, and they win the Super Bowl. But Carson Wentz, being the quarterback of that team, was the reason they were in the one, right? And then last year, I was like, this guy's really hard to watch, right? And early on, we were grading Carson Wentz really well. And I thought, they were getting some good outcomes. That San Francisco Niners game that they won in the rain notwithstanding, he was playing good football. And then, you had the Arizona game, which was ugly, and they still win that game outright. That was the Christmas week game. And there was a lot of COVID. There was a lot of Quentin Nelson being out. There was a lot of COVID, and they lost to the Raiders at home. And then they got killed by Jacksonville in Week 18. And that team goes from being a 9-6 football team, favored to go basically 10-7, 11-6, and they're out of the playoffs. And now Carson Wentz is gone. And I want us to take a step back and say, well, okay, but for 2 third-round picks, Carson Wentz is a pretty good acquisition, right? It's a lot better than Taylor Heineke. And so I'm going to bring this back to my main reason for possibly liking the Washington Commanders this year. Their offensive and defensive lines are really good. Okay. The Washington football team last year had one of the highest rates of perfectly blocked run plays in the league. And Antonio Gibson, because of injury or ineffective play or just being new to the running back position, averaged 5 yards a carry on perfectly blocked runs. That was half as many as Jonathan Taylor did. So, their skill position guys were just not capitalizing on good play by the guys in the trenches up front. Now, they do lose Brandon Sheriff, but you look at their offensive line with a PFF Elite subscription, and you still have Leno is an 80 graded guy. Norwell's kind of a high 60s guy. Roulier is a low 80s guy. Schweitzer's a high 70s guy, and Cosme is a 75. They're a PFF offensive line. No shitty players on their offensive line. Defensive line, obviously, with Sweat and Chase Young and Daron Payne and guys that they've drafted high, they're going to be good up front there too. And again, that's kind of the Eagles thing, right? Where you take good line play and competent quarterback play, which I think is the gamble with Wentz. Surround him with, I think, some athletes, which you have in McLaurin, you have in Thomas, the tight end, you have in Gibson, presumably. And this team's floor is actually a lot higher than I think people believe.
No, I agree with you. The floor, I think, is higher than people believe. Sadly. It's unfortunate because there are a lot of really good players on this team. Terry McLaurin is one of the better receivers in the NFL, and he continues. We talk about like how Allen Robinson has never had a decent quarterback throwing the football. Terry McLaurin is in that same spot, dude. I mean, this is mean. Like, free Terry McLaurin. Can Terry McLaurin go play anywhere else where there's a competent quarterback? Because Carson Wentz was woefully inaccurate last year, and that's what worries me. He was below average at every single depth of the football field from an accuracy standpoint. And that is a problem because he played on a team. Actually, sorry, let me check that. He was above average throwing the ball 20 plus yards downfield. So on those like few attempts where he actually aired it out, he was slightly above average. He was woefully below average every other depth of the football field. And that is obviously where the bulk of throws come. That is worrisome because he was on a Colts team that really does the most, right? They had a good offensive line. They have a good scheme. Frank Reich, puts the numbers to work for him. And this was, he had Carson Wentz, the 25th best PFF grade from a clean pocket. That's not good. That's not great. And in a situation that's going to be, I think, slightly worse for him in Washington, even though, they do have some good players, especially on the offensive line. They do have some players that played well there. It worries me. And they have Terry McLaurin, and that's kind of it. And, to your point around Antonio Gibson, like, why did Carson Wentz look good last year? It's because the Indianapolis Colts gained 10 yards every time they blocked it up for Jonathan Taylor. When it's half as many, you're going to have Carson Wentz in third down a lot more frequently than the Indianapolis Colts did. And it's not going to be good there. I think I would have to lean out of principle under in that situation. But maybe this is just us
this is
having
one we
to
have
disagree
Washington
about
at 8.3. So I'm going to probably disagree just a little bit. I think that, again, I think that this is just, a fairly, this is a team with a high-ish floor. And so I like them winning they were a 7-win team last year. I think that it gets better this year. Like, once we move on to the Giants, I think this is underscored. Like, I think the quarterback play in Washington was horrendous. And I think people like Taylor Heineke as a guy. They liked the game against Tampa last year. And we sort of like our prior or our emotional standing towards him is that of positivity. But the guy was freaking awful last year. And they still
No, he was. They had a travesty of a quarterback situation again. But here's the thing, Eric. You think that Carson Wentz, first off, Carson Wentz stunk last year on a team that was good. You think he's going to one of the most cursed franchises in the NFL, and you think this dude is going to overcome that?
It's a good question. My prior on Carson Wentz is, look, in his years as a quarterback in the league, rookie year was 7-9. Second year was 13-3. Third year was 9-7. Fourth year was 9-7. Fifth year was the 4-12, but he got benched, after the 4-11-1. And then last year was 9-8. Mm-hmm. Like, Wentz is bad. Again, this is the Mike McCarthy thing. Wentz is bad relative to other guys that we think of as Super Bowl guys, right? Wentz has a Super Bowl ring, and yet he's kind of bad. But I don't think he's bad relative to Taylor Heineke. That's I think Mike McCarthy's bad relative to other Super Bowl winning head coaches, but I don't think he's Jason Garrett. Like, that's kind of my, that's why I think maybe there's some value on fading the narratives that Mike McCarthy is terrible, and there's value on fading the narrative that Carson Wentz can't tie his shoes. Like, that's kind of my thought process there.
No, I think Carson Wentz can tie his hunting boots to go out and kill some elk in North Dakota.
Sleeve up.
I don't think he can. I don't think he's an accurate quarterback. Yeah, he's not accurate. I'm gonna say something mean.
He's not cool.
He sucks.
Like, we've already established some people who aren't cool. He's not cool.
Good. He's not cool. He stinks as a leader. He's gonna get injured.
Okay, let's move on to the New York Football Giants because
I'm all out on them.
Okay.
Before we do, speaking of being all out on something, be all out on hair in the wrong places that is not well manicured. And go to get Manscaped. Use promo code PFF at manscaped.com. Get 20% off plus free shipping on things you need this summer. I'm telling you, you need them. Because if you're going around this summer and you haven't trimmed yourself up from head to toe, not smelling good, don't have some good deodorant, your skin is not moisturized, it's going to be bad. Everyone was at home with COVID, so everyone's bringing their A game out. Make sure you get the weed whacker, nose, ear, hair trimmer along with the lawnmower 4.0, which we both use, and extol the virtues of. And here's another thing. April is draft season, but it's also Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. Manscaped has partnered with the Testicular Cancer Society to bring awareness to testicular cancer, men's health, and early cancer detection. And that is good because fuck cancer. Get 20% off and free shipping with promo code PFF at Manscaped and help do a little good while you're at it. Go to manscaped.com. Get yourself looking good for this summer. Okay. The New York Football Giants. They have the lowest win total by a half game. It is 7 minus 110 on both sides. The Daniel Jones experiment. This is it.
Yeah, but we make it 7.99. I think that here's the thing about the Giants. Joe Judge is that bad at head coach. Jason Garrett is that bad at offensive coordinator. I don't think people realize how much going into a competent group can help them. Now, there's projection here clearly, right? And like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth when you're saying, look, just because Sean McVay is good doesn't mean Kevin O'Connell's good. Just because Sean McDermott's good doesn't mean Brian Dable's going to be good, right? But Brian Dable is one of the engineers of an offense that started out with Josh Allen as very rough clay and has made them. I mean, the Buffalo Bills are the favorite to win the Super Bowl this year, right? And I think a lot of that is the working around Josh Allen, right? And one of the things I showed on Twitter, if you look at perfectly blocked runs, you search that. The Buffalo Bills had the first or second highest expected perfectly blocked run rate, meaning their scheme is such that you would expect them to have a high rate of perfectly blocked runs. A lot of that's the quarterback running, a lot of that's, but they don't have great offensive line in Buffalo. They have okay offensive line. Fast forward that to the Giants. The Giants were actually above average in that last year with who they had. Andrew Thomas had a terrific year last year as a second-year tackle. Daniel Jones has some athleticism, right, to his detriment in some cases, and they have 2 picks in the top 7 in the NFL draft. And I think one of those is going to turn into a tackle, whether that be Evan Neal, Ike Ekwonu, Charles Cross. I think, and then you go, Josh, the GM as well for Buffalo, building great teams, that kind of thing. This team is not as far away, I think, as public perception would indicate.
My did Eric freeze?
I'm good.
There's a little glitch there. You froze on me, but I by and large agree with you, and I will say this: all the things that you just said about the Washington Commanders / football team, I kind of feel that way about the Giants. Like, their situation last year was an abomination. It was so bad. Their coaching was so bad. It was awful. It just can't be that bad again. I'm not sure I'm in on Brian Dable. I'm not sure. I think he may be like, rich man's, in a bad situation, he could be like rich man's Freddie Kitchens. That's obviously me just saying that he kind of looks like him and probably drives a big truck. Yeah, it's bad. But he could be really bad and be way better than Joe Judge. And I don't think he's going to be really bad. I don't. And there were some things about that. I mean, not some things. Awful. All the things about their offense last year stunk. It was awful. And they had so many injuries. They had a malady of injuries at receiver. Obviously, Daniel Jones got hurt himself. And you have those 2 picks in the top 7. Do I think those picks are immediately going to come in and contribute? Well, it's in the draft, we talk about this a lot. Sometimes you're not going to get that immediate return on investment, but you have 2 shots at that. you have two shots at getting a player that comes in and actually makes a difference, whether it be a tackle, whether it be Sauce Gardner, whether they, trade down potentially if someone is trying to jump I think this is interesting. Is someone going to try and jump the Panthers if Malik Willis drops, right? And could they get some extra value there and acquire some players? But Daniel Jones, despite all of that shit last year, was the 20th highest graded quarterback in the NFL. And this is the thing that you've talked about a lot that I will bring up here. He was 32nd in the NFL in big time throw rate. Big time throw rate is different than turnover-worthy plays and negative throws, negatively graded plays, because you need opportunities to make them. Like the best quarterback in a shitty offense with someone that has no idea what they're doing, like they can't just make big time throws happen, right? Because players have to be, open in positions where you can throw the ball down the football field, and that just wasn't happening. So I think that happens this year, and this is the team that I would go over relative, if you talk about these two bad teams in this division, the Commanders and the Giants, give me the Giants every single day of the week and twice on Sunday. And that's partially a fade on Carson Wentz, but it's also look, the Giants last year had one of the worst situations in the NFL.
The loss that I'm nervous about is Patrick Graham. I actually did think Patrick Graham was a good defensive coordinator. They do lose Jabril Peppers. They're going to need some play, and they're probably going to lose Bradbury because they can't afford him under the salary cap when they want to pay their picks, right? So they're going to need probably. I mean, I think Sauce Gardner. You look right now at his draft prop at 7.5. That's clearly saying, hey, we think he's going to the Giants, right? And so. But you pair him with Adoree Jackson, who had a pretty good year last year. Xavier McKinney from Alabama is a pretty good, defensive back. Blake Martinez is okay at linebacker, and then you have two stud defensive tackles in Leonard Williams and DeMarcus Lawrence. You need Azeez Ojulari to play well, right? You need him, second round pick, to have a good year and step up. But this team is not that far away. Easy schedule, bad division. Daniel Jones, to me, has a possibility of emerging and not necessarily being a star, but being a winnable quarterback in 2022. Speaking of winnable quarterbacks, George, let's talk about some objections from our listeners who were angry about how I talked about Derek Carr. So for one, here's the first one, and this is King of Kings. 040492, an apt name I think for today.
By the way, these are from the King of Kings of commentary,
correct.
Which is YouTube.
Comparing Carr to Tannehill and Cousins is pathetic.
Yes, okay.
Apparently, and I thought I was being. I mean, analytics though. ... I mean, at least they worked out for Staley last year. So a couple digs here. For one, I think it'd be funny to ask Titans and Vikings fans.
By the way,
if
thank
they
you
would
for
be
your
offended by
commentary.
Comparing their quarterback to Carr. But Raiders fans, a thematic consistency in this discussion of the Raiders was how offensive it was to compare Derek Carr to Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, by the way, I think he's 8th in WAR in the NFL since 2018 or whatever. A very good quarterback, and I think he's in Carr's class. I think to assume Carr's better than him by a country mile to the point where then you take a swipe at analytics at the end is pretty interesting. So that one I found was an interesting take there. Carr was worth about 0.2 of a win less than Kirk Cousins last year.
Can we just do this?
0.3 of a win less than Ryan Tannehill. The Colts are better than the Raiders. That's where I turned it off.
Who would you rather have though?
Hold on. Listening to this stooge again. And that was from Ryan Stone. I put the D at the end of his name, just for effect. But Ryan Stone here says Colts are better than the Raiders. That's why I turned it off. I won't be listening. Can you tell me a position group where the Colts are worse than the Raiders? Wide receivers, one.
I mean now it is. Yeah. I would say quarterback.
Do you think Carr is better
slightly.
than this version of Matt Ryan?
I guess defensive line.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, like I would take Derek Carr over Kirk Cousins, not because ever so slightly. And the reason being is that Derek Carr does not suck as much as Kirk Cousins sucks. And like, if you need him, if you need your team to believe in someone, like give me Derek Carr. I think
in some people's eyes, Derek Carr is cool.
At least Derek Carr isn't cool either, but Derek Carr isn't isn't like
okay. So here's another one. I guess, if that makes sense. This one it hits at me a little bit. Eric's ability to bend backwards to say how the Chiefs are perfectly building every year.
A lot of bend.
He's objectively analyzing all 31 other teams, but he's a full-blown diehard homer with the Chiefs. LOL. Okay, I'm just gonna say this, and I know it makes you cringe, so I'm gonna be mindful of my friendship with you, but I'm just gonna say this right now. The Chiefs have won 6 consecutive AFC West titles. They've made the playoffs 7 straight years, which is the longest in the longest streak in the league. They've hosted 4 goddamn AFC Championship games in a row. They've made 2 Super Bowls in the last 3 years, and they've won a Super Bowl. If you look, I am being objective. If you're a Raiders fan and you want me to stop talking about the Chiefs, win the fucking division for the first time since 2002. I'm sorry. You had a negative point differential last year, and then you lost to the Bengals. You were the first team to lose a playoff game to the Bengals in 30 years. Don't come at me with this high and mighty stuff. This is ridiculous. Okay, do I like the Chiefs? Yes, I do, but they're likable, okay? All I'm saying.
Well, that's your opinion. I found this one to be exciting. This was from the Stackanova. The same things you're saying about Derek Carr and the Raiders ceiling. You said almost the exact same thing about Matt Stafford and the Rams last season. It was, quote, what's the point when they'll only be marginally better and still won't win a Super Bowl? Then the Rams won the Super Bowl. You forget what you said, say the same things about the Raiders. Matt Stafford is a similar QB to Derek Carr. First off. Actually, I'm not even going to say first off. That's just amazing. The Raiders and the Rams entering, so the comparison is ridiculous. The Rams were a much, 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 much better team. The Rams have 2 of the best non-quarterbacks in the entire 3, actually, sorry, of the best non-quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, the Raiders do have Devontae Adams now, but they don't have Aaron Donald. They don't have Jalen Ramsey. They're not going to have Von Miller here. They don't have Robert Woods. That is a little ridiculous. But this is the question I have for you. Matt Stafford, similar to
no. By the way, the Raiders
how do you feel about
35-1 to win the Super Bowl, 6-1 to win their own division, and have a win total of 8.5. The Rams at this time last year had. I mean, our reference point for the Raiders is what's the point? You're not even going to make the playoffs, right? Whereas the last year the Rams were favored to win their own division, were something like 14-1 to win the Super Bowl, and were win total of like 10.5. So these 2 teams aren't even close to being the same. Again, stop. And again, we were wrong about the Rams. That's the thing. We have to be 3 times as wrong about the Raiders for them to win the Super Bowl. Let's be quite honest here. I think Carr is I think Cousins is in the very tool. Sorry, not Cousins. Stafford. Here's my my Freudian here. Stafford is a high variance version of the tier that Carr's in. Carr is a very consistent, very good quarterback without the ceiling that Stafford has. And I think their averages are similar.
I think that's fair. Yes. I think that's the right way to put it, right? The ceilings, the high-end throws that Matt Stafford makes, Derek Carr does not make as nearly as frequently.
I don't understand Eric's logic here.
Okay.
There are not quarterbacks better than Carr available. You don't just roll over and quit because the division is good. Well, for one, the Raiders, if you unpack the contract, which we hadn't at the time,
I don't think that's what we were asking them to do.
The Raiders are basically doing what I'm suggesting, which is to play it year to year with Carr. Like, that's exactly what it is. But, again, everything has a price. You don't need to find a quarterback better than Carr to be a better team. You need to find a quarterback who cost benefit analysis is better than Carr's. And if Carr's making, now he's not, but if he were making $35 to $40 million a year, that's not more positive expected value. If he's making 25, it's probably even. And the problem with a guy who's even is that every other position then has to be plus EV. And we know the Raiders they haven't drafted well in years. And like, it's not, so you can, and that was the whole thing with the Rams. Stafford was probably just strictly EV this year, right? He was basically played up to his salary, maybe a little less if you count the dead money on Goff and stuff like that. But everybody else was positive EV around him. And that's how you win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and then you could argue that Stafford in the playoffs or in situations where you needed him was plus EV in this past season, right? Where he you saw the high end of his variance,
and then
when you
see the late
happen,
December game, January game where he threw 3 interceptions in Minnesota and they barely won because of a punt return, and the game they won by 1 against the Ravens, who were starting Brett Hundley. Like, the thing wasn't perfect with respect to Stafford last year either, and again the rest of the roster sort of made up for it. I'm thinking here, again, the funniest thing is, if you're new to listening to the show, just take some time, try to understand our point of view. I think the majority of issues I have with comments are when they don't even properly discuss our point of view, right? Our point of view is not that Carr sucks. It's not that the Raiders have no chance. It's like, we're just wondering, like, why would you do what you do for the chance that you're supposedly getting here? Yeah,
I just hope everyone knows that you still love them. I don't know if that came through in all of that. Especially on, look,
it's more than saying
forgiveness sorry. On Easter, something that you.
Sorry.
All right. Do we want to close out?
So just a little bit of a push here. There are going to be the text analytics articles that are coming out from me and Ben Brown. We have Desmond Ridder first, which is going to make all the scout people happy, but that's exactly where the data is being derived. Go to pff.com, use the promo code
you should have check out that
text analytics stuff. Let's talk about Ballsack or just whack here.
We got to work on Eric. We got to work on that tease a little bit.
Well, the text analytics article had Jalen Hurts as one of the best quarterbacks in his class. It compared him to Deshaun Watson.
That's true.
I think it compared the good parts of him
and
to
the
Deshaun
comparisons,
Watson, not the parts that we've discussed at length recently here. So again, it's another one. We're using Dane Brugler's The Athletic scouting reports, and we're using some latent semantic analysis to sort of look at, and it does a really good job of stacking who's going to get drafted where. If you're holding on to a Desmond Ridder 40-1 ticket to be first quarterback overall, that's now 10-1. Congratulations to the syndicate members who did that. But even, it has Willis second. I'm just going to give that away too. So I think it's going to, it sort of foreshadows the fall for Kenny Pickett as well. So that's kind of interesting. Moving on. Small hands, Kenny.
Yeah, go check. This is one of my favorite. This is one of my favorite things that we do every year, and one of the reasons for that is it's a mathematical way of weighing all the things that people love, which is the scouts analysis, and I think that's why it's so cool to check out. So it's going to be one of the first things that I read tomorrow, and everyone else should go.
Let's get to this one. This is
okay.
Desmond Ridder is intriguing to me because he's so advanced when it comes to quarterbacking compared to the other guys in the draft.
Who said this, apparently? Who supposedly said this? Does it have a quote? This sounds like something Dan would say.
Yeah, this was sincere.
I'm going to say this is actually Dan Orlovsky.
Again, not that I don't like Desmond Ridder.
Yep.
I think Desmond Ridder's fine. But none of these quarterbacks in this draft, including Malik Willis, including Kenny Pickett, are in the credible interval with the top 4 guys last year. Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields. So I kind of like this idea that a quarterback's advanced in this draft kind of irritates me. The one time we got to see Des Ridder last year against a SEC team, every single ball was batted down, it felt like. So how advanced could he be if he's like his processing is not that quick? That's an interesting one. Okay. Next one. The picture here, again, this man mean mugging the crowd. LeBron James drops 45 in game 1 of the Battle of the Cancun. 45 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists. Year 20, Lakers take game 1 over the Clippers. Mean mug. LeBron James.
Incredible. If you fell for that, you get you just get banned from the internet. That's one where if you send it to like your dad who just hates LeBron, he
right.
He sees it and like loses his mind.
So that's Ballsack.
Like,
all right, last one.
Yeah. That's good. Not well done by Ballsack.
This is. Has there ever been a deal that upset the market like the Jaguars' Christian Kirk contract? Will it really force a first-round run on wide receivers so teams can find cheaper labor? Will smart teams adjust by designing more creative running back passes concepts? Do teams react by drafting more pass-catching tight ends? This is Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl.
The guys, this has to be something like, Jim Nagy said.
Look, how much do we have to do this? If a running back could catch passes as well as a wide receiver, he'd be a wide receiver. George, how many tight ends in the NFL are good? It's like 6 at most. If there were more good tight ends, there would be in the league. There's not a button. Like 20 years ago, there were 10 good tight ends. There were 12 good tight ends, right? You played fantasy football. Like Brandon Myers was catching 75 balls. But like there isn't some button to push. There aren't these, like there's only 3 guys that play tight end for Iowa. They're all going to get drafted. Year after, like there aren't good tight ends. You don't push this button anymore. I don't know. It makes me mad. Like this tweet made me mad.
That one was so easy. That one was so easy because I can just That was definitely a football take right there. By the way, speaking of other sports, Kevin Durant is having like the worst game of his life right now, and they're down 10. And I'm probably gonna live bet the game.
We have this second USFL game of the day starting here. It'll surprise no one that it's 3rd and long.
Let's go. That's just how they should just get rid of 1st and 2nd down, start the game with 3rd and long. Start every series with 3rd and long. That'd be fantastic. That was our show. We thank you all for hanging out with us. Make sure you check out the text analytics stuff. We'll talk about it a little bit more on Wednesday, but you can read about it starting tomorrow and make use of that promo code. We will see you on Wednesday. Peace.